Swadika, thank you for joining us on Newsline. We are broadcasting live on NBT, Radio Thailand FM 88 and on NBT World. It's Friday, January the 15th, and you're with me, Thratira Kausan. And welcome to today's segment of Thailand Moves Forward. In our first story, Indonesia blamed Islamic State for an attack by suicide bombers and gunmen in the heart of Jakarta on Thursday that brought the radical group's violence to the world's most populous Muslim country for the first time. Just 7 people were killed despite multiple blasts and a gunfight, and 5 of them were the attackers themselves. It took security forces about 3 hours to end the attack after a team of at least 7 militants traded gunfire with police and blew themselves up. An Indonesian and a Canadian were killed in the attack, and 20 people, including a Dutchman who works for the United Nations Environment Program, were wounded. A police post in the middle of Jakarta's main street was destroyed as the attackers targeted an area near a Starbucks cafe as well as Jakarta's oldest department store, Serena's. Jakarta Police Chief Tito Karnavia said Islamic State were to blame for the assaults. He named an Indonesian militant called Barun Naim as the mastermind behind the attack. The brazen siege has suggested a new level of militancy in a country where low-level strikes on police are common. Indonesia has seen attacks by Islamist militants before, but a coordinated assault by a team of suicide bombers and gunmen is unprecedented and has echoes of the sieges seen in Mumbai 7 years ago and in Paris last November. Prime Minister General Prayut Chan-o-cha has sent a letter of condolence to the Indonesian president on the bombings in Jakarta and joined the global community in condemning the attack. The Prime Minister said he was shocked and deeply saddened to learn of the series of explosions and gun attacks yesterday in Jakarta, which resulted in the loss of 4 lives and several injuries. On behalf of the Royal Thai government and the Thai people, he said he wished to extend his heartfelt sympathies and condolences to Indonesia and to the families of those who have lost their loved ones in these tragic incidents. He added that Thailand joins Indonesia and the international community in strongly condemning these hideous attacks. Foreign Minister Don Pramatwinai also extended his sympathies and condolences to the families of the deceased and to the victims of the attacks. The South Korean and French ambassadors to Thailand have paid a courtesy call on Deputy Prime Minister and Defense Minister General Prawit Wongsuwon in order to strengthen bilateral relations. General Prawit gave a warm welcome to His Excellency No Kwang-il, Ambassador of the Republic of Korea to Thailand, as well as His Excellency Gilles Garchon, Ambassador of France to Thailand, during their visit with him at the Ministry of Defense. On behalf of their countries, the 2 ambassadors expressed readiness to take to the next level the existing cooperation with Thailand in such fields as trade, military affairs, and national defense. They also affirmed their government's intentions to continue exchanging official visits with Thailand in the future. This year marks the 160th anniversary of the Thai-French diplomatic relations. The 2 countries have been engaged in close military ties and cooperation with a constant exchange of visits. The Japanese ambassador to Thailand has visited Deputy Prime Minister Wisanu Kriangam to tighten Thai-Japanese relations. Dr. Wisanu gave a warm welcome to His Excellency Shiro Sato-shima, who was recently appointed to the post in Thailand. His Excellency said he will work with the Thai government to strengthen bilateral relations. The Deputy Prime Minister, for his part, expressed gratitude towards the Japanese ambassador for his understanding of the political situation. Dr. Wisnu assured that the Thai government is undergoing a reform process within the specific time frame and that Thailand will hold elections no later than June next year. The 2 nations have enjoyed 130 years of strong bilateral ties. To commemorate the diplomatic milestone, foreign officials in Thailand and Japan are working together to organize a celebration in both countries. Several government agencies, along with the Royal Thai Navy, held a press conference on Thailand's progress in combating illegal, unreported, and unregulated, or IUU, fishing at the Santi Maitri Building, Government House. The Deputy Chief of Staff of the Royal Thai Navy, Vice Admiral Jumpon Lumpikanon, stated that the Thai government has placed IUU problems on the national agenda so as to address the situation comprehensively. The efforts came after the European Union pointed out that Thai fisheries have no legal framework to monitor, control, and conduct surveillance and law enforcement. Therefore, the government has integrated all related sectors to introduce proper controls. Thailand has established the Command Center for Combating Illegal Fishing, or CIF, and 28 port-in, port-out controlling center across 22 coastal provinces.
We cannot answer instead of the EU delegation, but we believe that from the previous recommendation, we answer all the questions that been asked by the EU. However, if it was found that we have a weak link in our progress, we are welcome and we are glad to receive additional recommendation from the EU so we can progress further.
Coping with the IUU fishing problem lies in enacting laws and raising people's level of participation, developing a system of monitoring, control, surveillance, and traceability, cooperating with national and international agencies, and assisting fishers affected by the regulations.
FAO Code of Conduct on fishery, responsible fishery, so that we believe that we follow the international standard, and I'm sure that it will help each other in evaluation of the international community, and we believe that we conduct up to 80% of their requests. And we cannot answer for others to evaluate us. However, we believe that the buyer from Thailand, such as the US and Spain, can answer for us later on that we progress into anti-human trafficking on that as well.
The National Legislative Assembly, or NLA, has approved in principle the proposed draft law on establishing new courts to tackle corruption. At the NLA's meeting on Thursday, members of the legislature deliberated the draft law to establish corruption courts, which have won majority approval. NLA member Glanarong Jantik, who supports the draft law, said that the definition of corruption should be clarified as it may leave out some types of corruption, such as the abuse of state funding. The NLA voted 174 in favor and none opposed, with 5 abstentions to endorse the bill and set up a 15-member special committee to work on it over 60 days. Meanwhile, Deputy Prime Minister Wisanu Kriangams noted that the draft act would not affect the existence of the Supreme Court's criminal division for political office holders. The National Reform Steering Assembly, or NRSA, is collecting feedback from all of its committees while establishing a new coordinating panel to work with other agencies in implementing reforms. Spokesperson of the NRSA, Whip Kamnoon Sitisaman, revealed that the Whip recently called a meeting to discuss compiling reform plans from 12 NRSA committees. NRSA Speaker Captain Tinapan Nakata was entrusted with overseeing the process. The information will be used to formulate a comprehensive reform plan of the NRSA, which will undergo a review by the NRSA members later on. In addition, the NRSA also resolved to set up a 7-member coordinating committee with NRSA First Deputy Speaker Alongkorn Polabut appointed as its chairman. The committee's objective is to coordinate reform efforts with other main agencies, including the National Legislative Assembly, the Cabinet, the National Council for Peace and Order, and the Constitution Drafting Commission. The Federation of Thai Industries, or FTI, and the Department of International Trade are holding a seminar on ways to invest in the Iranian market following the lifting of economic sanctions by world superpowers. Deputy Minister of Commerce Suwit Masinsi delivered a keynote address on the government's policy to mobilize Thai businesses in new markets. He said Iran is an interesting country to watch for after the official lifting of economic sanctions in early 2016, which will allow Iran to have more economic and trade flexibility. Currently, investors from many countries, especially Europeans, have begun opening trade and investment contracts with Iran. Thailand itself must also accelerate its efforts to open new trade channels with Iran during its period of economic recovery and increased demand. This presents opportunities for Thailand to increase trade, investment, and tourism as an alternative to saturating export markets such as the United States and the European Union. Mr. Suwit expects that in the next 3 to 5 years, bilateral trade between Thailand and Iran will reach 3 to 5 billion baht in value. Meanwhile, FDI President Supan Mongkol Suchi said that due to the economic downturn, Thailand must find new export markets. Iran presents an opportunity for Thailand's food industry as Iran is currently unable to meet domestic demands, particularly for rice, poultry, vegetables, and fruits. Prospects are also bright for exports of electrical appliances, auto parts, and rubber, all of which are products that Thailand holds a highly competitive advantage. The Ministry of Education has planned a series of gifts for teachers nationwide on the occasion of Teachers' Day tomorrow, January 16th. Education Minister General Dapong Ratanasuwan is planning to reduce teacher workload, adjust public curriculum, and repair 40,000 teacher dormitories nationwide as a gift to all educators. The ministry is also expected to work with the private sector in improving 7,000 schools across the country. General Dapong has revealed that Teachers' Day celebrations are being held until this Sunday by the Teachers' Council of Thailand at Kurusapa Hall. The event is meant to encourage teachers to follow His Majesty the King's advice on education. The Ministry of Education has also instructed their provincial offices to organize a Teacher Appreciation Week, along with various public service activities. Schools have been told to come up with their own Teachers' Day slogan and promote it throughout the year. Educators are also encouraged to visit their pupils at home during this week to promote better teacher-student relationships. The Ministry of Natural Resources and Environment recently held a press conference on National Forest Conservation Day with the theme, Forest is Ours. The event was aimed at raising public awareness of the importance of forest and environment issues. Deputy Director General of the Ministry's Royal Forest Department, Pralong Dampongthai, reiterated that National Forest Conservation Day would be held on January 29th at Khao Yai National Park to encourage forest conservation.
Before that, I would like to say the cabinet meeting, they have decided on the 14th of every year to be the forest conservation of the nation. But today, so we are organized for the press conference to tell all the people what we are going to do and what we are going to have the event on the. Actually, we are going to organize the event on the 28th and 29th for the forest conservation of the nation. But at that day, what is the meaning of the Forest Conservation Day? Because we think that we would like to urge and to push and to ask all the people, not only the new generation, but also from those of all the people of the Thai people to think and how to conserve the forest, how to protect the forest, because right now the forest is very important of the world, and not only in the Thailand. See, because the forest conserve and protect all of the nation, all of the people, and also the forest is to be the watershed of the water And also right now we are mostly concerned about the climate change of the world. So the forest is our life. Forest is our life and everything we have to relate with the forest. Yes.
National Forest Conservation Day, the ministry will launch over 9,000 rangers for patrol inspections in all national parks across the country, in a bid to build a connection and ask for cooperation from local residents in the area. In addition, the ministry will launch a new application called Forest for Thai as a channel for the public to report illegal logging, forest fires, and any suspected irregularities by officials. And that's the end of today's edition of Thailand Moves Forward. Next, in our Austin news, the Ministry of Tourism and Sports is aiming to generate 2.3 trillion baht in revenue with its Discover Thailand campaign. But before we take a quick break, let's take a look at the exchange rates and commodity prices.
To maintain a strong nation, Thailand is promoting 12 core values for the good of the people. Third core value: being grateful to parents and teachers.
ASEAN Political and Security Community. Prevent being deceived. Prevent being forced. Prevent being injured. The problem of human trafficking in children, women, and labor has been increasingly severe. Thailand and the ASEAN Intergovernmental Commission on Human Rights are working together to get rid of these problems in order to be fully accepted by the international community. One vision, one identity, one community.
Welcome back. You're watching Newsline. The Ministry of Tourism and Sports is aiming to generate 2.3 trillion baht in revenue this year while pressing ahead with the strategy to discover Thailand. Tourism and Sports Minister Kapkan Watanawarangpoon affirmed that the Discover Thailand campaign will continue in 2016 due to positive feedback from last year. She said the promotion campaign this year will focus on sustainability, quality, added value, and spreading income. In the meantime, tourism development will be pushed forward, particularly in provinces along the borders with Laos, Myanmar, and Cambodia. The move is expected to bring more income to local tourism SMEs while supporting Thailand in its goal to become the travel hub of the region. Emphasis will be placed on attracting first-time visitors from major markets including China, Europe, and ASEAN. Ms. Kapkan stated that the ministry has set a revenue target of 2.3 trillion baht this year, up 5% from last year. However, she expressed concerns over potential negative effects from terrorism, natural disasters, and the economic slowdown in China. Elsewhere around the world, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu accused the European Union of holding his country to a double standard and reserved special criticism for Sweden, whose foreign minister called for an investigation to determine whether Israel was guilty of extrajudicial killings of Palestinians during the recent surge of violence. Swedish Foreign Minister Margot Wallström comments earlier this week were the latest in a series of statements by Wallström that have irked Israeli authorities. Ties between Sweden and Israel nosedived when Sweden recognized the Palestinian state shortly after Wallström's center-left Social Democrats won a parliamentary election in 2014. Since October 1st, Palestinian stabbings, car rammings, and shooting attacks have killed 24 Israelis and a U.S. citizen. The wave of bloodshed has raised fears of wider confrontation a decade after the last Palestinian uprising subsided. During the period, Israeli forces or armed civilians have killed at least 145 Palestinians, 93 of whom the authorities have described as assailants. The latest 2 killings took place on Thursday when knife-wielding Palestinians tried to stab 2 soldiers in 2 separate incidents in the West Bank. Most others have been killed in clashes with security forces. Rights groups have accused Israel of using excessive force to quell a surge in attacks, which has raised fears of wider confrontation a decade after the last Palestinian uprising subsided. France's financial prosecutor gave an update on the French criminal investigation into corruption involving former officials at the International Association of Athletics Federations, or IAAF, calling for cooperation from Russian and Singaporean authorities. The scandal, which has rocked the world of athletics and drawn comparisons with a corruption and governance scandal at the Global Soccer Federation FIFA, occurred under the lead of former head of World Athletics, Lamine Diack. The Senegalese stepped down last year after 16 years leading the IAAF, has been found responsible for organizing and enabling the conspiracy and corruption that took place in the sports organization. He appeared to have personal knowledge of fraud and extortion of athletes carried out by the informal, illegitimate governance structure that he had put in place, according to an independent commission of the World Anti-Doping Agency. Financial prosecutor Elaine Houlet said the commission was working with Russian authorities to clarify the facts and that Singapore authorities have been asked for help as well. And that's it for today's edition of Newsline. For any comments or suggestions, please feel free to email them to us at newsline.nbt@gmail.com. You can also follow us on Facebook. Just simply type in NNT or check out our website at thainews.prd.go.th/en. We're going to say goodbye now with footage of morning frost on Doi Intanon in Chiang Mai province. I'm Tra Chirakosan. Have a wonderful day. Swadika.